We are looking at Matthew chapter 5. Last Sunday we looked at the Beatitudes. This Sunday we're looking at the passage that immediately follows that. And that's Jesus talking about, as Christians, we are to be light and salt. Light and salt. I came across a book, an interesting book, a little while ago, but it's one of those books that sticks in your mind. It has a way of weaving and merging into what you understand the world to be. And it was, what would the world be like if Jesus had never been born? And that was kind of the idea of it. And does a very good job of showing us the difference that followers of Christ have made in the world. And a lot of the things that have made a change in the world were not only because of what Christians did, but was also because of the work that those who were Christians beforehand had laid a foundation, had created an atmosphere where people like this could emerge and do great benefit in the world. You don't have to look very far into science where you see the importance of Christians following Jesus. You could look into culture, into the arts, into politics when they go well. When you could look into education and medicine, and just about every facet in life has been somehow, in some way, improved by the presence of dedicated, serious followers of Jesus. And it continues to this day. Sometimes it takes a couple generations to look back and say, oh, look it. Yeah, what the work this person did turned out to be quite significant. But when you're in it, a lot of times we underestimate their value to society and what they're doing. It kind of takes a deeper perspective to look back. Regardless of how much good Christians have done in the world and the way they have improved it and relieved people of terrible misery and slavery and all of the above and getting value to people, regardless of that, any of us can open up our news app or whatever your favorite news apps are. And what are you going to see? You're going to see international news. And in that international news, forever now, we've been able to see wars and terrorism and in terrible ways that countries are hurting people or threatening people. You can look down a little further, see national news. And in your national news, you're going to read about bribes. You're going to read about corruption. This isn't recent. This is just the way it is. This is just common ways that we live in this world, things we have to deal with. On the local level, when you read local news, boy, is that depressing. You're going to read about rapes. You're going to read about thieves. You're going to read about murders. And then if you want to look at what business is doing, well, at some point in that list of everything that's going on, you're going to read about somebody defrauding somebody. You're going to read about somebody embezzling money. If you read about sports, what are you going to read? Doesn't have to, every page or any section that talks about sports is going to talk about how these people have been using illicit drugs, illegal drugs. Same thing with gambling. Illegal gambling's going on, and it's kind of taking the integrity of the game away. And then you get to entertainment section where it talks about people that people like to read about. And wow, you're going to find out that this guy is going out with that guy's wife, and then he dumps her. Now he goes out with his brother, and oh my gosh, it just never ends, does it? It just keeps going. And so we just got to admit and realize, yeah, this world is really dark. This world is really screwed up. This world is really hard. And we understand that. But what we as Christians understand, that it's not done just randomly. There's a reason for it. There's a reason for the evil and for the sin. It's because this world is broken. This world is sinful. We understand that that's what it is. The result of that is it turns into a deep discouragement. It turns into a lot of fear in that. It turns into skepticism, and it turns into anger. And we look at that and we say, what can be done in this world? God has an answer. God has a solution that includes every single one of us as our participation in the world. When God looks at that, he says, well, it's pretty dark. It's pretty dark. And the darker it is, the less light you need to change everything. The less light you're going to need to change everything. And that's what Jesus has come to tell us, that we are the light of the world. We are the salt of the earth. We are the ones that God has brought into this world to make a difference in this world, that we would change this world from bad to good, from darkness to light, to a world that hurts people to a world that saves people. That's our task as Christians. When we look at that, we we can understand that God has a purpose, and he defines it in the metaphors of salt and light. Strangely, he calls us salt and light. Nowhere else in the New Testament does God use a metaphor to talk about people. He talks about people in very personal terms, but never in a metaphor. But this way he does. He gets, you guys are literally salt and light. This is who you guys are. This is how you guys are. And when God does that, when he reminds us who we are, he doesn't say maybe or something along those lines. He says, no, this is who you are. And this is why I created you. And we look at ourselves and we say, well, yeah, I think that should, be important. We should be able to do that. And what we begin to see is that the world needs us. The world actually needs you. The world actually needs people who are following Jesus and following the direction and doing the things that God has given each person to do. The world needs us to care about what is going on in the world. The world needs us to be concerned about the poverty, concerned about the exploitation, concerned about the education and lack of education. The world needs that, but let me take it up one notch, and even more mysteriously, God needs us. Isn't that crazy that the creator of the world, the one who created the salvation and plan of salvation, the one who has instituted all of eternity, he has organized creation in such a way that he needs us to follow through on what he wants us to do. We take part in a very interesting way in the salvation of the world. Not as the Savior, certainly, but certainly as the people who do what God gives them to do. And we do it the way God wants it done, and we leave the results to him. We are the people that God uses. And to think that God doesn't need you is to not understand Scripture. God depends on us. God expects us. God calls us. Isn't that just an absolutely awesome thought about that? The duty that we all have to be salt and light in this world. That's how God does this thing. In verse 13, we're going to read here in just a moment, it says, you're the salt of the earth. In the Greek, the true meaning of that is a little bit skewed in a sense, but this is how they would speak. You guys are the only salt this earth has. You. The only salt this earth has is you. He's speaking in terms of not the rock salt, not the mineral, but in terms of people who are going to help this world. It's got to be you guys. There's no help outside of you guys. You guys are the ones. What an amazing thought. The Romans looked at that. They used to say, well, there's two useful things. There's sun and there's salt, because those are two very valuable for all of life. Jesus took the importance that the Romans gave salt and sun, and he turns it over to us and said, just like you guys need this to survive, for your kingdom to thrive, and for you guys to move the way you do, that's what God needs for us in his kingdom, is for us to be the people that God has called us to be and challenged us to be and put it on our hearts to be. Let's read this passage together. As is our custom, I'll read the first verse, and you guys read the second, and before you know it, we'll be through. This is Matthew chapter 5, and it's verses 13 through 16. You are the salt of the earth, but if the salt loses its saltiness, how can it be made salty again? It is no longer good for anything except to be thrown out and trampled underfoot. Neither do people light a lamp and put it under a bowl. Instead, they put it on its stand, and it gives light to everyone in the house. The third point I want to make here is your Christian job description has two parts: salt and light. That's your Christian job description. When we are saved, wouldn't it be nice if God just brought us up to heaven? Woo! Wouldn't that be easy? I think a lot more people would be saved if it worked that way. I'm saved, I received Jesus, he's forgiven me of my sins, and all of a sudden, whoo, up you go, now you're in heaven. But that's not how it works, is it? Why? Because there's work to do on this earth. There are things that need to be accomplished. And God gives us these duties and these job descriptions, and it's a two-word job description. Be salt, be light. Be the difference in this world. Be what I've called you to be. Now, to the Romans, the salt was a preservative, and it helped people. Now, in this day and age, and it's only been on the recent side, as far as you count. Your grandparents would have known about this. Maybe your great-grandparents would have known about this. But you didn't always have refrigeration. And so meat would spoil very quickly if it wasn't for electricity and refrigeration. But God provided salt. And so what you do with salt is you just rub it like crazy on the meat. And what it does, it creates a barrier around the meat, and it draws the liquid, it draws the water out of the meat. And that prevents the bacteria from growing, the bacteria and the microorganisms that destroy meat. And meat can last months. Isn't that amazing? Outside of a refrigerator, just sitting on a shelf somewhere. You can go and you can eat that. That's how the explorers continued to have meat as they traveled around the world, because it was well salted. And that's what Jesus is telling us in the capacity of salt, that we are here to enable people. We are here to benefit people. We're here to make this world work in a way that is better for them. But in that, we often look at the Bible as a light. In Psalms, talks about how Scripture is a light unto our path. The light in the Bible is for us as the church. It is what we read. It is how we understand God. But that's not how the world understands God, because the world doesn't read the Bible. What does the world read? You. The world reads me. It reads the Christians. And we are constantly, by our behavior and by our actions and by our priorities, writing out the gospel for people to understand, for people to see. That's the role that we have, is to live in such a way that when people, quote unquote, read our lives, they learn about Jesus. When they read our lives, they see the hope of eternity. When they read our lives, they see the significance of being forgiven of our sins. When they read our lives, they see it's by the grace of God that we're able to overcome the addictions. We're able to come with the darkness. We're able to overcome the sinful things of this world by God's grace. And it's in that, as they read our lives, they see real transformation. They see people making a great difference in the world. Let's say someday you go home and your house is dark. Some night you go home and there's no electricity. Wouldn't that be funny if all electricity went out just in a couple more hours? That'd be hilarious, wouldn't it? Television, football. Okay. I guess that wasn't a joke, was it? That was really, that struck fear in everybody. Don't say that. Don't worry, I have no power. And it won't go out. Okay, I don't know. I hope it doesn't go out. If we go home and the house is dark, what are you going to do? Blame the house? Hey, house, what's wrong with you? You're dark. How can you be dark? I need you to have light. What's wrong with you? Come on, do something, house. Well, that's ridiculous, isn't it? You don't blame the house for being dark. You come and you find light to go into the house. You find candles, you find oil, you find electricity, I don't know, find LEDs. You bring light. It's bringing light into the house that makes all the difference. You have a piece of meat, and it sits out, and all of a sudden it starts to smell really bad. Think of old fish, and you're looking at that, and then you're saying, my gosh, what's wrong with this meat? What's wrong with this fish? It stinks. It's horrendous. It makes me want to vomit. It's disgusting. What are you doing? What does somebody do? They don't look at that fish. They don't look at the piece of meat and say, what is wrong with this fish? My gosh, look, it's been sitting here just a couple of days, and it already stinks. Why? Who got this thing out of the ocean? Why does this fish? You don't do that. You sit there and go, well, why didn't somebody put this fish in the refrigerator? Or in the old days, why didn't somebody wrap this fish in a lot of salt to preserve it? Well, why didn't somebody do something to this fish so that it wouldn't be disgusting to anybody? Why didn't somebody do something to the meat so that it wouldn't spoil and make everybody sick? Why did somebody do something? And then we look at society. We look at society, and what do we see in society? We see the corruption of the darkness of society. We see the society stinking like old fish. And then we look at society and say, what's wrong with you guys? Why are you like this? How does God look at society? Does he look at it and say, I don't know how you guys don't fix yourselves. I don't know why you can't elect better politicians. I don't know how you can't get organized and treat each other and have more just. No, what does he do? He says, where are the Christians? Where's the salt and light? Where's the solution? It's the people that are the solution. And God has put it on us, you and me, to be salt and light in the worst of the parts of this world, or even parts that God just makes obvious to you and is in your world, and you step in it. Maybe it's one life. Maybe it's a group of people. Maybe it's a system. Whatever it might be, you are God's solution to the things he brings to you. Have you ever had that dream in your life where you wish you could do something about something? That you could be somebody who would relieve the pain, or relieve the misery, or have a better future for a group of people? Have you ever had that? Have you ever felt deep inside your own heart how blessed you are and the advantages you've enjoyed? But you see the world and you see even better people than you who don't have anything like you do, and you go, why is it like that? It's not supposed to be like that. And to rectify that, God has given them his church. He's given them the believers. He's given them people, you and me, people who are baptized, people who are following Jesus, to be salt and light, to be the solution for those people. I myself, I carry dreams and hopes, and my meager attempts to try to solve those, I'm grateful that that's part of my life, that I'm sensitive, that I'm concerned about the people who are suffering needlessly in this world just because of the imbalance of justice, the imbalance of power. Christians can do something about it. As an individual or as a group, however it might be, God gives you what you need to make a difference in the world. I'm always amazed at how any one person can't do much. But when they get together with other Christians, and maybe they don't even have that passion, but when they get together with other Christians, the other Christians say, you know what, I care about that. And I'm glad you care about that. I'll help you out. Oh, the things the church can do. The things that Christian organizations can do. And when I mean organization, I don't mean anything formal. I just mean people organizing among themselves to bring relief to something. It's in God's will. I remember a phrase somebody used, what would you do if you knew you couldn't fail? I think that's a great question for Christians. Because the only point of failure is when we think about ourselves. What can I do? And all of a sudden, the flag of failure comes flying up real fast. But when you think about what God can do, and that God would use you, perhaps just a link in the chain, or perhaps there's an enormous amount of resources that God is just waiting for somebody to come and open the door to them. God knows people that you don't know. God is already speaking to people that you have never thought even knew existed. God has people that care about the things that he's put on your heart as much as you care about those things. And they want to do something about it. And somehow or another in God's kingdom, he brings us together to bring solutions into people's lives. And God does this on a global scale. One of the point I want to bring here is we're making a transformative global impact around the world. One of the interesting photos, and I just can't get enough of it, I see it pop up every once in a while on a social media feed. And it's that picture where it's a satellite image of half of the earth. And it's over territory where there are cities and countries. And you see where the cities are. And they're big. And there's just bright lights. Like if you ever see a satellite image of nighttime of the United States, what do you see? Well, about a third of the country on the East Coast, it's very, very bright. And then you get to the middle of the country, there's nothing, right? Maybe a couple little lights here and there, but not much. It's pretty dark. But then you get all the way to the West Coast, and there's a good amount of lights where we are too. It's kind of significant. But what do you see? This is where things are going on. This is where things are developing. This is where progress is being made. What if there was a satellite that showed God at work? Places where people were serving God. Places where people were sacrificing so that others could learn about Jesus, just the way somebody sacrificed for them to be able to learn about. What would that image look? I think that would be, I don't think I could ever take my eyes off of it. I would just be amazed at the global impact. Places you never thought would have the presence of God. It's full of the presence of God. God is working in people's lives that you cannot imagine. People who are risking their lives, risking society, risking everything to be salt and light. To be salt and light. Not to take over in a political revolution, but to help another individual. To be a blessing to another individual. To help somebody live just another day. Oh, it would be an amazing view. And that's God's perspective. That's what God gets to see. And we are fortunate in the measure that God opens that vision up to us so that we can see globally what he's doing. One of the people that I came to really admire is Ami, my wife's dad. and his name was Angelito. They call him. And so what was interesting about him is he would tell me the story. I'd say, well, how did you get your start? He was a pastor, a Nazarene pastor. He had a wonderful church, a very big church, and they were doing a lot of wonderful things in their church. And getting to know him, okay, that's not true. He wanted to get to know me because I was going to marry his daughter. That's really how it worked. But in the midst of all that, it's called a pamanahikan. It's the worst experience a human being can have is when a Filipino dad questions you if you're good enough to marry his daughter. It is a miserable experience. I don't recommend it to anybody. Well, you shouldn't marry Filipinos, but just know that's part of the price. Yes, they are worth marrying, but boy, it's not going to be cheap. You're going to pay a price. Now, pamanahikan. I only know one word, Filipino, pamanahikan. That's seared in my brain. Just you say that makes me jump in fear. Well, that's part of it. But in that, I learned about him. And he told me how he grew up near where he lived, near where the church was. And he said, when I was a little boy, I was 7 years old. He says, my family was so poor, we didn't have enough money to go to school. And we think, well, of course you went to school. No, that's only in the United States. That's only a few select countries. Most of the world, if you can't afford your books, if you can't afford materials, you're not in school. They don't let you in the door. And what he would do is that he would go out and sell newspapers, 7 years old, because there was something in his heart that said, go to school, go to school. Something just driving him. And so he'd go out and sell newspapers. And then after he sold all the newspapers, he would go to the train station and offer to shine shoes for people. And he would have a case of water, and he would sell water bottles to people, all in an effort to buy school supplies so he could keep going. He got a little older and he got a little bit bigger. Now he was able to carry one of those big boxes filled with bread, pandesal. Okay, that's the second word I know in Filipino. You know what? I know a lot of Filipino word because it's food. I know a lot of food. And so he would carry that and he would say, I don't know if you've ever been in the Philippines, but that's what you eat for breakfast. It's delicious. Somebody gets up super early in the morning, goes to this bakery, comes back with pandesal, and you drink it, eat it with your coffee. It's absolutely wonderful. And that's what he would do all the way through, enough that this guy was able to graduate from high school. Now, first in his family, something horrible happened to him when he was 12 years old. He was hit by a car. He was hit by a car and his head hit the pavement so hard, it was just blood everywhere. And they took him to a hospital. Don't think American hospitals. That's not how the world lives. They took him, did what they could, and told the mother he's not going to survive. He's lost too much blood. That's the end of that. In her desperation, she went to a little church that was near her. And she begged the pastor to come pray for her son. That's all they had. That's all they had. This story is so common. This story could be retold hundreds of millions of times. That's the real world we live in. And that pastor came to the hospital room and he prayed for that boy, and miraculously the boy stopped bleeding in front of everybody. And the story the mother tells is, grandma, nobody knows why. It just happened when the pastor prayed. Well, that little boy immediately knew why he was on this earth. I want to be a pastor because I want to go pray for people and help them when there's no other help for them. And God put that in his heart, and he made it all the way through school, worked really hard, and then to be a pastor, you have to go to Bible college. So he went to Bible college, same kind of a thing, and there was a missionary there, John Patel. John Patel had been a missionary in China during the revolution. It had been imprisoned, and it wasn't pretty, but as soon as he got out of China, instead of coming back to the States, he said, I'm still good. I can still tell people about Jesus. And he went to the Philippines and lived out the rest of his career telling people about Jesus in the Philippines. And he saw this Angelito guy, and he says, this guy is smart. This guy can make it happen. And so he talks to him about, what about if I was able to send you to a university in the United States, Olivet Nazarene University, Kankakee, Illinois. You could go there. And he did all the visa work for him, all the paperwork, and somehow found a path for him to end up at this college in Illinois. And that's where Angelito ended up. And to pay his way, he worked as a janitor at the school. A lot of hours. And so while everybody else is out partying, everybody else having a good time, even studying, there's Angelito and they're scrubbing floors, vacuuming the place, cleaning trash, taking trash out. And he gets to his graduation day, and the school says, we're so sorry, but there's a balance on your account. that you can't graduate unless it's paid. $500. Now, $500 to us, you could pay that, right? Not in that age, not in that day. He would have to work another year just working in order to save up $500. And he was really discouraged, and the graduation day came. He couldn't participate until one of the administration came to him and said, somebody paid your bill. Somebody paid you can graduate. And he went and he graduated, walked through the line, and it was that missionary that followed up and saw what was going on. He said, I'm not going to stop now. Paid his way so he could get all the way through. Now, do you think he lived his life for himself? No, not now. Not after he learned everything that God was doing for him, that there was a plan for his life. No, he's going somewhere. He's going somewhere. And he established a church, pastored a church, grew this church, and he saw the poor children, grew in a very poor neighborhood, saw the children who were lost, children who had no hope, didn't have the money to go to the schools. There were no Christian schools. They could have gone to a Catholic school, but those were expensive. Very few people got to go to those schools. And he said, I can do something. And so he rallied his church around, and they began a school. Nazarene Academy, Angeles City, still there today. I believe it's about 45 years old. And it's still going. And they don't bring in rich kids, because there are no rich kids. They bring in the poor. Is that hard? Oh, it's horribly. In fact, that's a part of our life at home, is talking about the school, keeping up with our brother and sister that work at the school. But what's the mission? The mission is to educate the poor. The mission is to educate young people who have no chance, give them a chance of life. And after you've been doing it for several decades, like this school has, what do? You end up with a list of alumni. And this list of alumni has ended up around the world, continuing to be salt and light to a dying world. Salt and light, salt and light. That's what God calls you to. That's what God calls me to. I don't know where you are and what God is speaking to you, but you know exactly what God is saying to you. You know exactly what God is leading you to do. Against great odds, yeah, if you're by yourself, it's great odds, but you're not by yourself. You have God who has put this desire in your heart because he has a solution. He has a way. He has a network that you could never imagine. And I'd encourage you to be open to the Spirit and say, God, whatever it is, if it's what you want me to dedicate my life to, so be it. Maybe God's speaking to somebody here and says, hey, I'm calling you to become a pastor. I'm calling you into the ministry. And then your response would be, are you crazy? I'm not going to do that. I'll starve to death. What am I going to do? What, crazy? I can't do that. But God doesn't let up, because whoever God calls, he never removes that call from them. Maybe God did call you and you've just resisted it with everything you've got. Well, keep resisting, because someday you're going to faint. And you're going to come back and say, the only way I'm going to find peace is when I come back into the will of God and become the person that he's called me to be. Men and women, is God calling you into the ministry? This world needs ministers. This world needs people dedicated to go in to the places that nobody wants to go and bring people close to Jesus. Do we have solutions? No, we don't. But we have Jesus. We have Jesus. You have Jesus. You are the salt and you are the light that God is giving to the world.